The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Hundreds of species filled the circular seats that rose toward the ceiling like steps in an ancient arena. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no solid form at all, and floated in containment fields. They had come from every corner of the known galaxy to discuss matters of territory, trade, and power. Ambassador Xyrith Kolvan of the Valorian Dominion stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with gray skin stretched tight over a skull that came to a sharp point at the back. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he waited for the noise to die down. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed a small, blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "Honored members of the Council," Xyrith began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "I come before you today with a simple request. The Valorian Dominion wishes to expand into Sector 447. This sector contains valuable mining resources that will benefit the entire galactic economy." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Sector 447 was on the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the busy trade routes and powerful empires. Most species had never even bothered to explore it. "There is, however, a small complication," Xyrith continued. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed a creature standing upright on two legs. It had no scales, no claws, no visible weapons on its body. Its skin was soft and exposed. It had only two eyes, positioned on the front of its round head. "This is a human," Xyrith said. "They have recently colonized a world in Sector 447. They call it New Helsinki." The Drenari ambassador leaned forward. She was covered in thick green scales and had survived 3 assassination attempts. Very little surprised her anymore. "And what do you know of these humans?" she asked. Xyrith smiled, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. "Very little, because there is very little to know. They achieved interstellar travel less than 100 years ago. They have no natural armor, no venom, no claws or fangs. They require sleep for approximately 1/3 of their existence. They die from temperature changes that most of us would find merely uncomfortable." He paused for effect. "They are, in simple terms, one of the weakest species we have ever encountered." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Korvathi delegate, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like stone, slapped his knee. "And you need council approval to deal with these soft creatures?" he bellowed. "Just brush them aside and take what you want." Xyrith nodded slowly. "That is precisely what I intend to do. But protocol requires that I inform the Council before any military action against a spacefaring species, no matter how primitive. I am asking for formal approval to claim the human colony and its resources. If they resist, we will pacify them." The vote was quick. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council pressed their approval buttons. The motion passed unanimously. No one objected. No one asked questions. The humans were simply too small, too weak, and too far away to matter. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, the Drenari ambassador paused beside Xyrith. A word of caution, Ambassador," she said quietly. "I once read a file on these humans. They have an interesting history." Xyrith waved his hand dismissively. "All species have interesting histories. What matters is their capabilities, and their capabilities are nothing." The Drenari ambassador studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said, "but the file mentioned something curious. These humans, on their homeworld, they were once prey, small and weak, as you say. Yet somehow, they became the dominant species. They killed creatures 10 times their size. They spread across every corner of their planet. They even killed each other in numbers that should have ended their species entirely. Yet they survived. Does that not concern you?" Xyrith laughed. "Old stories and legends. Every species has them. The Valorian Dominion has conquered 43 species. These humans will simply be number 44. The Drenari ambassador said nothing more. She simply walked away, her scales clicking against the crystal floor. She had tried to warn him. That would have to be enough. 12,000 light-years away, on a small planet covered in forests and lakes, a little girl named Sophia ran through her family's garden. She was 7 years old, with dark, curly hair and a gap where her 2 front teeth had fallen out. In her hands, she carried a piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. "Papa! Papa!" she shouted. "Look what I made at school today." Her father, Anders, looked up from the vegetables he was planting. He was a tall man with kind eyes and dirt on his hands. He had come to New Helsinki 15 years ago as part of the first wave of colonists. He had helped build the roads, the schools, and the hospitals. He had met his wife Maria here, and together they had created a life. "What do you have there, little one?" he asked, wiping his hands on his pants. Sophia thrust the paper toward him. It showed 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. "It's us," she said proudly. "That's you. And that's Mama. And that's baby Eric. And that's me." Anders felt his heart swell. He picked up his daughter and held her close. "It's beautiful," he said. "The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We should hang it on the wall." From inside the house, Maria's voice called out, "Dinner is ready. Come inside before it gets cold." Anders carried Sophia toward the house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, he could see the lights of the colony's main city, beginning to flicker on. 30,000 people lived on New Helsinki now. It wasn't a big number by galactic standards, but to Anders, it felt like home. They sat down at the dinner table together. Maria had made stew with vegetables from their garden. Baby Eric sat in his high chair, making a mess with his food. Sophia talked endlessly about her day at school, about her friends, about a butterfly she had seen during lunch. It was an ordinary evening, a perfect evening. None of them noticed the stars beginning to disappear. One by one, blocked out by massive shapes descending through the atmosphere. The first explosion came without warning. The windows of the house shattered inward. Anders threw himself over Sophia, shielding her with his body. Maria screamed and grabbed Eric from his chair. The ground shook as more explosions rocked the colony. Through the broken window, Anders could see the sky filled with ships. They were enormous, each one larger than the colony's biggest building. Lights flashed from their undersides, and wherever those lights touched, fire erupted. "We have to run," Anders said, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. "We have to get to the bunkers." They ran out into chaos. People were everywhere, screaming, crying, trying to find their loved ones. The ships above continued their bombardment without mercy. Anders saw a school collapse, children still inside. He saw a hospital take a direct hit. He saw people he had known for years turn to ash in an instant. He ran faster, holding Sophia's hand so tight that his knuckles turned white. The bunker was 3 blocks away. They were so close. Anders could see the entrance, could see other families rushing inside. Just a little further. Just a few more steps. The light hit them without warning. Anders felt nothing. One moment he was running, holding his daughter's hand. The next moment, there was only silence and darkness. The last thing he saw was Sophia's drawing, somehow still clutched in his other hand, the 4 stick figures still holding hands under the yellow sun. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 12,000 human beings were dead. The colony of New Helsinki was nothing but smoke and ashes. The Valorian soldiers walked through the ruins, scanning for survivors. They found very few. Admiral Torvex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the destruction with satisfaction. The operation had gone exactly as planned. Minimal resistance, no casualties on the Valorian side. The humans had died like the weak creatures they were. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Inform them that their colony has been claimed by the Valorian Dominion. They have 1 standard month to surrender all remaining colonies and submit to our rule. If they refuse, they will be exterminated." His communications officer nodded and began preparing the transmission. Admiral Torvex returned to his quarters to rest. It had been a long day, but a successful one. Soon, the Valorian Dominion would control all of Sector 447. The humans would either surrender or die, and either outcome was acceptable. He did not bother to learn the names of those he had killed. They were just numbers to him. Statistics. Acceptable losses in the pursuit of expansion. He did not know about Sophia's drawing. He did not know about Anders and Maria and baby Eric. He did not know that in the ashes of New Helsinki, a rescue team would eventually find that drawing, somehow preserved despite the flames. They would find it still clutched in the remains of a father's hand, and they would weep. He did not know any of this, but he would learn. On Earth, the message arrived at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Within minutes, every government on the planet had been notified. Within hours, every news network was broadcasting the same images. The burning ruins of New Helsinki, the massive Valorian ships, the body count that kept climbing as more information came in. 12,000 dead. Men, women, and children. Farmers, and teachers, and doctors. Entire families erased in a single night. The world watched in horror. And then, slowly, the horror turned to something else. The emergency session of the United Nations was the largest in human history. Every nation sent representatives. Enemies who had not spoken in decades sat side by side. Old grudges, ancient hatreds, generations of distrust, all of it melted away in the face of what had happened. When the Valorian demand was read aloud, surrender or be exterminated, there was silence in the chamber. Then someone laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes before violence. The kind of laugh that means someone has made a terrible mistake. One by one, other voices joined in. The laughter spread through the chamber, growing louder and louder until it echoed off the walls. Delegates from countries that had been at war for centuries laughed together. They laughed at the absurdity of the demand. They laughed at the arrogance of creatures who thought they could threaten humanity and expect submission. When the laughter finally died down, the Secretary General rose to speak. "I believe," she said calmly, "that our response should be clear." The vote was unanimous. The response was sent back along the same communication channel the Valorians had used. It contained a single word, translated into every language the computer could identify. No. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex received the human response with confusion. "Just one word?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing else? No counteroffer? No plea for mercy? And health?" "Nothing else, Admiral. Just the word, no." Torvex frowned. This was not how conquered species behaved. They usually begged. They bargained. They offered tribute, resources, anything to avoid destruction. They did not simply refuse. "Perhaps they do not understand the situation," he said finally. "Send another message. Explain in detail what will happen to their remaining worlds if they do not comply." The message was sent. The response came back within an hour. It was the same single word. No. Admiral Torvex felt the first stirring of unease in his chest. Something was wrong. These humans were supposed to be weak, primitive, insignificant. They were supposed to surrender. Why were they not afraid? He did not know it yet. But he had just made the worst mistake of his life. He had attacked a species that did not know how to surrender. He had killed their children. And in doing so, he had awakened something that had slumbered for centuries. On Earth, the factories were already beginning to retool. The scientists were already beginning to design. The soldiers were already beginning to train. Humanity was not preparing to negotiate. Humanity was preparing for war. And when humans go to war, truly go to war, the galaxy would soon learn that there is no force in existence more terrifying. The Valorians had started this fight. Humanity intended to finish it. In a small office in Geneva, a woman named Elena Vasquez sat at her desk, staring at a holographic image of New Helsinki. She had been chosen to lead humanity's military response. She had fought in 3 wars during her career and had never lost a battle. But this was different. This was not a war between nations. This was a war for survival. On her desk was a file containing photographs of every person who had died on New Helsinki. She had looked at each one. She had memorized their names. She had promised herself, silently, that she would remember them until the day she died. One photograph in particular caught her attention. It showed a little girl with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. According to the file, her name was Sophia. She was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of her family. Elena traced the photograph with her finger. "I promise you," she whispered. "They will pay for what they did. Every single one of them. I will make sure of it." Outside her window, the sun was rising over Geneva. Across the planet, the war machine of humanity was beginning to move. Ships that had been mothballed were being reactivated. Weapons that had been banned were being rebuilt. Volunteers were flooding recruitment centers in every city, on every continent. The Valorians had thought they were attacking a weak and primitive species. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The war had begun. The transformation of Earth happened faster than anyone thought possible. In the first 72 hours after the attack on New Helsinki, the emergency coalition was formed. Nations that had threatened each other with nuclear weapons just weeks before now shared military secrets freely. Factories that had built cars and televisions and children's toys shut down overnight and reopened to build weapons, armor, and warships. There was no arguing. There was no debate. There was no time for politics. 12,000 people were dead, and humanity had only one thought: make them pay. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Global Command Center, watching dozens of holographic displays show the progress of human industry. Every screen showed numbers climbing upward, weapons manufactured, ships completed, soldiers trained. The numbers grew every hour, every minute, every second. "Report," she said to her aide. A young man named Captain Torres, who had not slept in 3 days. Torres checked his tablet. Dark circles hung under his eyes, but his voice was steady. "We've converted 93% of heavy manufacturing to military production. 14 shipyards are now operational, with another 12 coming online within the week. We've had 47 million volunteers for military service. We can only train about 2 million in the time we have. But the rest are being put to work in factories and support roles." Elena nodded slowly. "And the weapons research? Progressing faster than expected. The physics teams have been working around the clock. They think they've found a way to improve our plasma weapons by about 60%. And the engineering corps has developed a new type of armor that should hold up better against Valorian fire." "How did they do it so fast?" Torres smiled grimly. "They're not sleeping, ma'am. None of them are. They say they'll sleep when the war is over." Elena looked at her aide more carefully. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. She saw the same thing in everyone she met these days. The entire species was running on anger and grief and determination. It should have been unsustainable. By every measure of human physiology, people should have been collapsing. They needed sleep. They needed rest. They needed time to process the trauma of what had happened. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Every time someone felt tired, they thought of those 12,000 dead on New Helsinki. They thought of the children who would never grow up, the families that would never be whole again. And somehow, they found the strength to keep going. This was something the Valorians had not understood. They had calculated human endurance based on normal conditions. They had not accounted for what happened when humans were pushed beyond their limits. They had not accounted for rage. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex was growing concerned. 2 weeks had passed since the attack on New Helsinki. He had expected human surrender within days. Instead, he had received nothing but silence. His scouts reported strange activity in human space, but they could not get close enough to see what was happening. The few that tried did not return. "I want a full intelligence report," he ordered his science officer, a thin female named Cethix, who specialized in analyzing alien species. "Everything we know about these humans, their psychology, their history, their capabilities. Something is wrong, and I want to understand what." Cethix worked for 3 days straight, gathering data from every source available to the Valorian Dominion. When she finally presented her report, Admiral Torvex wished she had taken longer. "The humans are more complex than we initially assessed," Cethix began, her voice careful and measured. "They evolved on a high-gravity world with extreme environmental conditions. They are not the strongest species on their planet, nor the fastest. They survived through 2 primary mechanisms." She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared, showing a group of primitive humans chasing a large animal across an open plain. First, persistence hunting. Humans cannot outrun most prey, but they can outlast it. They simply follow their target for hours, sometimes days, until it collapses from exhaustion. Their bodies are designed for endurance over speed. Admiral Torvex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And the second mechanism? Pack bonding." Another image appeared, showing humans gathered around a fire, holding spears, and watching the darkness around them. Humans form intense emotional connections with their family groups. These connections drive them to extreme behavior when the group is threatened. They will sacrifice themselves for their pack. They will fight far beyond their physical limits. They will pursue threats until those threats are eliminated, regardless of the cost to themselves. "Interesting," Torvex said slowly. "But surely this applies only to their immediate family units. We attacked a colony, not a family." Cethix hesitated. "That is where the situation becomes concerning, Admiral. Human pack bonding is not limited to genetic relatives. They extend these bonds to friends, communities, even abstract concepts like nations or species. When we attacked New Helsinki, we did not simply kill 12,000 individuals. In the human mind, we attacked their entire species." "Their entire species?" "Yes, Admiral. Every human in existence now considers themselves to be under attack. Every human now views us as a threat to their pack. And there is more." Cethix pulled up another display, this one showing brain scans and chemical analyses. Human bodies produce specific chemicals during periods of extreme stress or anger. These chemicals suppress pain and fear. They allow humans to function without sleep for extended periods. They increase strength, speed, and aggression far beyond normal levels. Admiral Torvex stared at the data. "You're telling me that by attacking them, we've made them stronger?" "In a sense, yes. Under normal conditions, humans are relatively fragile. But under threat conditions, particularly threats to their young, they transform. Their historical records are filled with instances of individual humans performing impossible physical feats when their children were in danger. Lifting vehicles that should be too heavy, fighting through injuries that should be fatal, continuing to function long after their bodies should have stopped." The Admiral sat in silence for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been forming in his mind since the beginning of this briefing. What happened to the other predators on their homeworld? The ones that were larger and stronger than the humans? Cethix looked at him with something that might have been fear. "The humans killed them, Admiral. All of them. Every major predator species on Earth was driven to extinction by humans. And they didn't just hunt them for food. Historical records indicate that humans would specifically target creatures that threatened their communities and pursue them until none were left. They have a word for it." "What word?" "Revenge." Admiral Torvex felt cold for the first time in his life. He had commanded fleets against 43 species. He had seen enemies that were faster, stronger, better armed than the Valorians. He had defeated them all, but he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that could not be intimidated. An enemy that would not stop. An enemy that would follow him across the galaxy if necessary, for years or decades or generations, until he was destroyed. How long until we can expect a counterattack? He asked. Cethix checked her calculations. Based on their industrial capacity and current activity levels, 6 months, at minimum. Possibly as long as a year. Then we have time to prepare. With respect, Admiral, I don't think you understand. Cethix pulled up one final display. It showed a graph of human industrial output over the past 2 weeks. The line climbed upward at an angle that should have been impossible. This is their production rate. They are building weapons faster than any species we have ever encountered. They are working in shifts around the clock. They are converting their entire civilization to a war footing. That cannot be sustained. Under normal circumstances, no. But these are not normal circumstances. They are not sleeping, Admiral. They are not resting. They are not even eating properly. And they don't care. Their bodies are destroying themselves from the inside, and they don't care. They will keep going until they either defeat us or die trying. Admiral Torvex stood up abruptly. That's enough. Prepare defensive positions throughout our territory. Increase scout patrols. I want to know the moment the humans make any move toward our space. Yes, Admiral. As Cethix left the room, Torvex walked to the window of his quarters and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the vast darkness of space, a species was preparing to come for him. He had thought this would be an easy conquest, a simple expansion into a weak territory. Another victory to add to the Valorian record. He was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, Elena Vasquez addressed the human race. She stood in front of a camera in the Global Command Center, surrounded by screens showing fleet movements and production statistics. Behind her, a single image was displayed. The drawing that Sophia had made. 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. It had been recovered from the ashes of New Helsinki and had become the symbol of the war. Every screen on Earth, every device capable of receiving a signal, carried her message live. Citizens of Earth, she began, her voice calm and steady. Citizens of every human colony. You know why I am speaking to you today. You know what was done to our people on New Helsinki. You know what the Valorians demand of us. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender. They think we will beg for mercy and offer ourselves as slaves to avoid destruction. They have studied our bodies and found them fragile. They have measured our technology and found it primitive. They have looked at us and seen prey. Her eyes hardened. They are wrong. She turned slightly, gesturing to the production statistics behind her. In 2 weeks, we have done what should have taken us years. We have united our entire species. We have rebuilt our industries. We have created weapons and ships and armor that will make the Valorians regret ever learning our name. And we have only just begun. She turned back to the camera. Some of you are working in factories right now, building the weapons that will bring justice to New Helsinki. Some of you are training to fight. Some of you are caring for the children and families of those who have gone to war. Every single one of you has a role to play, and every single one of you is playing it. She stepped closer to the camera, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. I know you are tired. I know you are grieving. I know that some nights, you wonder if we can really do this. If we can really stand against an empire that has conquered 43 species and never lost. Quote, she smiled then, a cold and terrible smile. Let me tell you something about those 43 species. They surrendered. They saw the Valorian fleet, and they calculated the odds, and they decided that fighting was not worth the cost. They valued their lives more than their pride, their freedom. She shook her head slowly. We are not like them. We have never been like them. When someone threatens our families, we do not calculate odds. We do not weigh costs. We do not surrender. We fight. We fight until we win, or until there is no one left to fight. This is who we are. This is who we have always been. She pointed at the drawing behind her. Sophia was 7 years old. She drew this picture for her father on the last day of her life. 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. A family. Her family. One of 12,000 families that were destroyed by the Valorians. Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion she had shown. We will remember them. Every single one. We will carry their names into battle. We will speak them before every engagement. And when we finally stand victorious over the Valorian dominion, we will make sure that the galaxy never forgets what was done here. She straightened, composing herself. The Valorians wanted a war. They thought it would be easy. They thought we would break. She leaned toward the camera one final time. They have no idea what they have unleashed. They attacked our children. They murdered our families. And now, they will learn what humanity does to those who threaten what we love. She stepped back. We are coming for them. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we can build. We will not stop. We will not rest. We will not forgive. Her final words echoed across every human settlement in the galaxy. They wanted war. Now, they will have it. And when it is over, the galaxy will know that humanity is not prey. We are the predators. We always have been. And the Valorians have just made themselves our prey. The transmission ended. Across human space, in factories and training camps and shipyards, people watched in silence. Then, as one, they turned back to their work. The machines hummed louder. The weapons were built faster. The ships launched sooner. Humanity was awake, and it was hungry for revenge. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex watched the human broadcast with growing horror. He had seen war speeches before. He had seen species try to rally their populations against the Valorian threat, but he had never seen anything like this. There was no pleading in the human commander's voice, no fear, but inevitable. And behind her, that child's drawing. Those 4 simple figures, holding hands under a yellow sun. The Valorians had destroyed thousands of such families, and they had turned their destruction into a rallying cry. Admiral, his communications officer said hesitantly, should we respond? Perhaps if we offered terms, open negotiations. Torvex shook his head slowly. You heard her. They are not interested in negotiations. They are not interested in terms. They want one thing. What is that, Admiral? Torvex turned away from the screen, his 4 eyes troubled. Us. They want us. All of us. Every Valorian who was involved in the attack on New Helsinki. Every commander who approved the operation. Every soldier who fired a weapon. He sat down heavily in his command chair. And I am beginning to think that they will not stop until they have us. The bridge was silent. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the human war machine continued to build. Ships were completed. Weapons were tested. Soldiers finished their training and prepared to fight. The Valorians had started this war, but it would be the humans who finished it. The first sign that something was wrong came at 03:00 hours, station time. Kethris 7 was a mining outpost on the edge of Valorian space. It was a small installation, home to approximately 3,000 workers and 500 soldiers. The asteroid it occupied was rich in rare minerals that powered the Valorian war machine. It was considered a safe posting, far from any combat zone. Private Venth was on guard duty when the lights went out. One moment, the corridor was bright and normal. The next, darkness. Complete and total darkness. Venth reached for his communication device, but it was dead. His weapons targeting system was offline. Even the emergency lights, which were supposed to activate automatically, remained dark. Control? He whispered into the silence. Control. Do you copy? No response. Venth stood very still, listening. His species had evolved on a dim world, and his eyes adjusted faster than most. After a moment, He could make out shapes in the darkness. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, and something else. A figure at the end of the corridor. Tall, bipedal, standing perfectly still. "Identify yourself," Venth called out, raising his weapon even though he knew it wouldn't fire. The figure did not respond. Venth took a step forward. His training told him to hold position, to wait for backup. But backup was not coming. The communications were dead. He was alone. He took another step. The figure was gone. Venth blinked. He had only looked away for a moment, a fraction of a second. But the corridor was empty now. Nothing but shadows and silence. Then he heard it. A whisper. Right beside his ear. A voice speaking words he did not understand, in a language he had never heard. For Sophia, something hit him from behind, and Private Venth knew nothing more. Commander Yethix was reviewing supply reports when the alarm finally sounded. It had taken almost an hour for anyone to realize something was wrong. By then, it was already too late. "Report!" he barked as he strode onto the command center. "What's happening?" His communications officer looked up with terror in his eyes. "We've lost contact with 17 guard posts. Power is out in sectors 4 through 12. And..." He swallowed hard. "We've found bodies, Commander." "How many?" 43 so far. All killed silently. No weapon fire. No signs of struggle. They were just eliminated. Yethix felt cold. 43 soldiers, dead without a fight, on a station that should have been secure. Do we know who's responsible? Security footage is offline, but we managed to restore a few seconds from one camera. The officer pressed a button, and a holographic display flickered to life. The footage was grainy and dark, but Yethix could make out the shape of a corridor. 2 Valorian guards stood at their posts, weapons ready. Then, moving so fast it was almost a blur, something emerged from the shadows behind them. 2 quick movements, and both guards fell. The figure paused, looking directly at the camera. It was a human. Its face was covered in dark paint, stripes of black and green that made it almost invisible in the low light. Its eyes were cold and empty. The human raised one hand toward the camera in a gesture Yethix did not understand. Then, the footage ended. "How many of them are there?" Yethix asked. "We don't know, Commander. Our sensors are offline. But based on the pattern of attacks," the officer hesitated, "we think there might be as few as 12. We think there might be as few as 12. 12? Yethix could not believe what he was hearing. 12? Humans have done all this? They're not normal soldiers, Commander. They move through our station like ghosts. They don't use our corridors. They travel through maintenance shafts, air ducts, spaces we didn't even know existed. And they..." He stopped. "They what?" "They don't stop, Commander. We've shot some of them. Confirmed hits. But they keep fighting. One of them took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and kept going for 6 more hours. We only know because we found blood trails, human blood, but no bodies. They carry their wounded with them." Yethix sat down heavily. This was not war as he understood it. This was something else entirely. These humans were not fighting according to any rules he knew. They were fighting like predators, hunting prey. And he was beginning to realize that on this station, the Valorians were the prey. Sergeant Maria Chen moved through the darkness like a shadow. She had been on Kethris 7 for 16 hours now. 16 hours without sleep, without food, without rest. Her shoulder burned where the plasma bolt had grazed her, but she had sealed the wound with medical foam and kept moving. There would be time to rest later. There would be time to heal later. Right now, there was only the mission. Her squad had been the first to respond to the call for volunteers. Special forces, the most elite soldiers humanity had. They had trained for years to fight in the darkness, to kill without sound, to appear and disappear like ghosts. But training was one thing. This was real. Maria paused at an intersection, listening. Her hearing had adapted to the silence of the station, and she could detect sounds that would have been inaudible under normal conditions. Footsteps. Far away. Valorian footsteps, heavy and careless. She signaled to her team. 2 fingers, pointing left. Move, silently. Take them down. They obeyed without a sound. 3 shadows flowing through the darkness, converging on the enemy patrol from multiple angles. The Valorians never knew what hit them. Maria stepped over the bodies without looking at them. She had stopped seeing faces hours ago. All she saw now were targets, obstacles between her and the mission objective. Deep in her mind, a voice whispered names. Not the names of the Valorians she was killing. Other names. Sophia, Anders, Maria, Eric. 12,000 names, scrolling endlessly through her consciousness. Before every mission, the soldiers watched a video. It showed the faces and names of everyone who had died on New Helsinki. Every soldier was required to memorize at least 100 names, to carry them into battle, to speak them before the killing began. Maria had memorized all 12,000. For Sophia, she whispered as she moved through the station. The names gave her strength. They pushed back the exhaustion, the pain, the fear. They reminded her why she was here, why she kept fighting, even when her body screamed for rest. She was not just a soldier. She was a messenger. She was carrying the voices of the dead to those who had killed them. And she would not stop until the message was delivered. In space above Kethris 7, the real battle was just beginning. Admiral Torvex had dispatched a fleet to protect the mining outpost as soon as he learned of the infiltration. 30 warships, more than enough to destroy any human force that might appear. But the humans did not fight like any species the Valorians had encountered before. The first attack came from an asteroid field that had been declared safe. Sensors showed no ships, no energy signatures, nothing but rocks and dust. Then, without warning, the rocks began to move. Evasive action, the Valorian fleet commander screamed. All ships, evasive action. Too late. The asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Humans had pushed them into position over a period of weeks, moving them so slowly that Valorian sensors had registered them as natural debris. 3 ships were destroyed in the first wave. Then the human fleet appeared. It was smaller than the Valorian force, only 20 ships to their remaining 27. By normal tactical calculations, the Valorians should have won easily. But the humans did not fight by normal tactical calculations. Their ships moved in patterns that made no sense. They ignored defensive formations. They took risks that should have been suicide. One human destroyer, its weapons destroyed, and its hull burning, flew directly into the hangar bay of a Valorian carrier. The resulting explosion destroyed both ships. They're insane, the Valorian commander whispered. They're completely insane. They're completely insane. He was wrong. The humans were not insane. They were simply operating by a different set of rules. Rules that said victory was more important than survival. Rules that said every dead Valorian was worth any price. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, both fleets were crippled. The Valorians had lost 18 ships. The humans had lost 15. By any normal measure, it was a draw. But the humans did not see it that way. They saw that they had faced a superior force and stood their ground. They saw that they had killed more than they had lost. They saw that the Valorians could bleed, and that was all they needed to see. Admiral Torvex received the news in his quarters, alone. 18 ships lost. Kethris 7 effectively neutralized. And reports coming in from across Valorian space of similar attacks. Small teams of humans, infiltrating stations and outposts, hitting supply lines, destroying infrastructure. They were not trying to conquer territory. They were trying to break the Valorian war machine one piece at a time. And it was working. Torvex pulled up a map of Valorian space. Red dots marked the locations of confirmed human attacks. There were dozens of them, scattered across the entire territory. The humans had struck everywhere at once, spreading Valorian forces thin, making it impossible to concentrate defenses. "How are they doing this?" he asked the empty room. "How are they fighting on so many fronts at once?" He knew the answer, even if he did not want to admit it. The humans were not fighting as separate units. They were fighting as one organism. Every attack, every infiltration, every battle was coordinated. Information flowed between human forces in real time. They adapted their tactics moment by moment, responding to Valorian movements before the Valorians even knew they had moved. It was as if the entire human species had become a single predator, and the Valorians were its prey. Torvex opened a file that Sethix had given him weeks ago. A file about human persistence hunting, about how humans had once chased their prey for days, never stopping, never resting, following the trail until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That was what was happening now. The humans were not trying to win a single, decisive battle. They were trying to wear the Valorians down, to cut their supply lines, to destroy their infrastructure, to make them run and run until they could run no more. And the worst part was, it was working. Valorian soldiers were beginning to break. Not from the fighting itself, but from the fear. They never knew when the humans would appear. They never knew which shadow might contain a killer. They slept with one eye open, jumping at every sound. The humans had turned the war into a hunt, and the Valorians were learning what it felt like to be hunted. On the human flagship Remembrance, Elena Vasquez reviewed the latest reports with grim satisfaction. The war had been going on for 8 months now. 8 months of constant fighting, constant pressure, constant loss. Human casualties were mounting. Ships were being destroyed faster than they could be built. Resources were running low, but they were winning. Admiral Chen's forces have secured the Kethris sector, Captain Torres reported. The Valorian supply lines have been cut. Their fleet is pulling back to defensive positions. Elena nodded. And the ground operations? Proceeding according to plan. We've liberated 3 mining colonies and destroyed 4 military installations. Valorian morale is collapsing. Their soldiers are surrendering in increasing numbers. Not enough, Elena said quietly. Torres looked at her uncertainly. Ma'am, it's not enough. Surrenders don't bring back the dead. Destroyed ships don't rebuild New Helsinki. We need to end this war. Decisively. Completely. She pulled up a holographic map of Valorian space. At its center, a single world glowed with a soft purple light. Valoria Prime. Their homeworld. The center of their civilization. As long as it stands, they'll keep fighting. They'll rebuild their fleets, train new soldiers, and come for us again. Torres swallowed. You're talking about an invasion of their homeworld. I'm talking about ending the war. Elena turned to face him. I don't want to kill civilians. I don't want to destroy their culture. I just want to make sure they can never threaten humanity again. And if they don't surrender? Elena's eyes hardened. Then we keep fighting until they do. However long it takes. However many it costs. We will not stop until this is over. She turned back to the map. Begin planning the final offensive. I want a complete battle plan within the month. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. Yes, ma'am. Torres left to carry out his orders. Elena remained alone on the bridge, staring at the holographic image of Valoria Prime. In her hand, she held a small piece of paper. A child's drawing, showing 4 stick figures, holding hands under a yellow sun. She had carried it with her since the beginning of the war. It had become worn and creased from constant handling. But the image was still clear. Almost there, she whispered. Almost there, somewhere in the darkness of space, the human war machine continued its relentless advance. Ships moved into position. Soldiers prepared for the final battle. The noose around Valorian space tightened day by day. The hunt was almost over, and the prey had nowhere left to run. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador Zyrith Kolvan stood at the center of the room, in the same spot where he had requested permission to attack the humans 2 years ago. But everything else had changed. His gray skin was pale and sickly. His 4 eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. His robes, once pristine and carefully arranged, were wrinkled and stained. He looked like a creature that had been hunted. "Honored members of the council," he began, his voice cracking. "I come before you today to request assistance. The Valorian Dominion is facing a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered. The humans. The humans must be stopped." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. They had all heard the stories. They had all seen the reports. For 2 years, they had watched from a safe distance as the Valorian Dominion was slowly torn apart. The Drenari ambassador leaned forward, her green scales catching the light. "Ambassador Zyrith, perhaps you could remind the council of how this situation began." Zyrith's face twisted. "That is not relevant to the current crisis. What matters is that the humans are advancing toward our homeworld. Their fleet grows larger every day while ours grows smaller. They fight without mercy, without restraint, without any regard for their own lives. Without mercy," the Drenari ambassador repeated slowly. "Without restraint. Interesting words, Ambassador. Tell me, how would you describe the attack on New Helsinki?" 1. The chamber fell silent. Zyrith stood frozen. He knew what she was doing. She was making him confront the truth that he had spent 2 years trying to avoid. The truth that every species in this chamber already knew. "That was different," he said finally. "That was a military operation. A strategic necessity. A military operation." The Drenari ambassador's voice was cold. "Against civilians. Against families. Against children. We did not know. You did not care." The words cut through the chamber like a blade. "You saw a weak species on a planet you wanted, and you decided to take it. You killed 12,000 people, including infants, and you expected them to surrender. You were wrong." She stood up, her scales clicking against each other. "Every species in this chamber has read the intelligence reports on humans. We know what they are. We know what they are capable of. Most of us chose to avoid their space precisely because we understood the danger of provoking them." She pointed at Zyrith. "You were warned. I warned you myself. In this very chamber. 2 years ago. I told you that humans had an interesting history. I told you that they had killed every major predator on their homeworld. You dismissed my concerns. You said they were just stories. How was I supposed to know? You were supposed to listen." The Drenari ambassador's voice rose to a shout that echoed through the chamber. "You were supposed to think before you acted. You were supposed to consider the possibility that a species that had conquered its own planet might be more dangerous than you assumed." She sat down heavily, composing herself. "I have no sympathy for you, Ambassador. None of us do. You started this war, and now you expect us to finish it for you. But we will not. We cannot. Because if we intervene on your behalf, we will be next." The Korvathi delegate, the massive 4-armed creature who had laughed at the idea of humans being a threat, spoke up. "She is right. We have studied their history. These humans, they once fought a war amongst themselves that killed 70 million of their own kind. 70 million. And they kept fighting. They never stopped. They never surrendered. They just kept killing until one side was destroyed." He shook his huge head. "They are different from us. Different from any species we have ever encountered. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas, for emotions, for revenge. And there is nothing more dangerous in this galaxy than a creature that fights for revenge." Zyrith looked around the chamber desperately. "There must be something you can do. Some way to stop them. If the Valorian Dominion falls, the humans will not stop there. They will come for all of you." The chamber considered this in silence. Finally, the Thalassian ambassador spoke. He was an ancient creature. his body half submerged in a tank of liquid that kept him alive. He had witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen empires. You misunderstand, Ambassador. The humans are not coming for us. They are coming for you. They have made it very clear that their war is with the Valorian Dominion and no one else. They have even sent diplomatic messages to several of us, assuring us that they have no aggressive intentions toward any species that did not participate in the attack on New Helsinki. Diplomatic messages? Yes. Quite polite, actually. They explained their situation, their goals, and their terms for peace. They said they do not want conquest. They do not want empire. They just want justice for their dead. Xyrith felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. And you believed them? We studied them. We observed their behavior. And yes, we believe them. The humans are not like us. They do not seek power for its own sake. They simply want to be left alone. Unfortunately for you, you did not leave them alone. You attacked their children. And now you must face the consequences. The Drenari ambassador spoke again. There is something you should understand, Ambassador. Something that might help you comprehend why we will not intervene. Humans have a saying. They say that there is nothing more dangerous than a parent protecting their young. She paused. Every human in the galaxy now sees themselves as a parent of New Helsinki. Those 12,000 dead are their children. All of them. Every human soldier who fights, every worker who builds weapons, every leader who plans strategy. They all carry those names with them. They speak them before battle. They write them on their weapons. They tattoo them on their bodies. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You did not just kill 12,000 people, Ambassador. You created 12,000 martyrs. And the humans will never forget them. Never. Not in 100 years. Not in 1,000. They will remember New Helsinki until the end of their species. And as long as they remember, you will never be safe. Xyrith stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by species that had once respected and feared the Valorian Dominion. Now they looked at him with something worse than contempt. They looked at him with pity. Is there nothing you can offer? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The Thalassian ambassador considered for a moment. We can offer you advice, Ambassador. Surrender. Accept whatever terms the humans demand. Cooperate fully with their investigation into the attack on New Helsinki. Hand over every commander and soldier who participated. And pray that it is enough. Surrender? The word tasted like ash in Xyrith's mouth. The Valorian Dominion has never surrendered. In 43 conquests, we have never. Then you will be destroyed. The words hung in the air. Final and absolute. The humans will not stop. They cannot stop. They are not built that way. As long as there is a single Valorian soldier who participated in New Helsinki still alive, they will keep fighting. And even if you somehow manage to defeat their current fleet, they will simply build another, and another, and another. They will keep coming, until one side is completely destroyed. The Korvathi delegate nodded grimly. I have seen the projections. Even if you somehow won every battle from now until the end of the war, the humans would still outlast you. Their population is larger, their industrial base is stronger, and their will to fight is infinite. But most importantly, the Drenari ambassador added, they have nothing to lose. You took everything from them when you attacked New Helsinki. Their innocence, their sense of safety, their belief that the galaxy was a place where they could live in peace. Now they know the truth. And that knowledge has transformed them into something that cannot be stopped. The vote was quick and unanimous. No assistance would be offered to the Valorian Dominion. Each species would maintain strict neutrality in the human-Valorian conflict. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, the Drenari ambassador paused beside Xyrith. I told you, she said quietly. 2 years ago, I warned you. You should have listened. She walked away without another word. Xyrith stood alone in the empty chamber, surrounded by silence. Above him, The living crystal walls pulsed with their soft blue light. Indifferent to his despair, he had come looking for salvation. He had found only condemnation. The galaxy had made its choice, and the Valorian Dominion would face the humans alone. On the human flagship Remembrance, Elena Vasquez received news of the Council's decision with grim satisfaction. They refused to help, Captain Torres reported. Every species voted against intervention. The Valorians are on their own. Elena nodded slowly. It's what I expected. No one wants to make themselves a target. Some of the other species have even sent us messages of support, unofficially, of course. The Drenari ambassador in particular seems to have a very low opinion of the Valorians. She tried to warn them. Before the attack, I read the transcript. Elena's voice was distant, thoughtful. She told them about our history, about what we are. They didn't listen. She turned to look at the tactical display. The human fleet was massed at the edge of Valorian space, ready for the final push. 2 years of fighting had brought them here. 2 years of blood and tears and sacrifice. How many have we lost? She asked. Torres checked his tablet. Total casualties since the beginning of the war: 412,000 military personnel, 63,000 civilians, 1,247 ships destroyed, nearly 500,000 people gone. In the pursuit of justice for 12,000. Was it worth it? Elena knew what some people thought. She knew there were voices back on Earth who questioned the war, who wondered if the cost was too high. They said humanity should have accepted a peace treaty. They said continuing to fight was just stubbornness, pride, revenge. Maybe they were right. But then she looked at the drawing in her hand. The 4 stick figures. The yellow sun. The family that would never be together again. And she knew that stopping was not an option. The Valorians are preparing their final defense, Torres continued. Intelligence suggests they've pulled every ship they have back to their homeworld. They're going to make their stand there. Then that's where we'll end it. Elena stood up, straightening her uniform. Signal the fleet. We move at dawn. Ship time. All units. Full combat readiness. Yes, ma'am. As Torres left to carry out his orders, Elena walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness, was Valoria Prime. The heart of an empire that had killed her people. The home of a species that had thought they could attack humanity without consequences. They had been wrong. In a few days, the war would be over. One way or another. Elena closed her eyes and thought of Sophia. The little girl with dark, curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. The girl who had died before she ever had a chance to grow up. We're almost there, she whispered. I promised you. I'm keeping my promise. When she opened her eyes, they were hard and cold. She was done mourning. Done questioning. Done wondering if what she was doing was right. The Valorians had started this war. She was going to finish it. Across the galaxy, in homes and ships and stations, other species watched and waited. They watched the human fleet gather. They watched the Valorian defenses strengthen. They watched 2 civilizations prepare for a final battle that would determine the future of an entire sector of space. And they learned that humans were not the soft, weak creatures they had assumed. They learned that attacking human civilians, especially children, was the worst possible mistake a species could make. They learned that humans did not forget, did not forgive, and did not stop. Most importantly, they learned to fear. Not the fear of being conquered. Not the fear of being enslaved. A different kind of fear. The fear of awakening something that should have been left sleeping. The fear of provoking a species that would follow them across the stars for generations if necessary. The humans had a word for it. The intelligence reports said. They called it a grudge. An injury that was remembered and repaid, no matter how long it took. The galaxy had seen many wars. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had seen species fight for territory, resources, power. But it had never seen a species fight like this. With this focus, with this intensity, with this complete and absolute refusal to accept anything less than total victory. The humans were terrifying not because of their strength, but because of their will. They simply would not stop, could not stop. They would keep fighting until they won, or until they were all dead. And the Valorians were about to learn that lesson firsthand. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 species, the same thought formed. Never attack the humans. Never threaten their families. Never give them a reason to hunt. Because if you did, there was no force in the galaxy that could protect you from what came next. The humans were coming, and the galaxy held its breath. Valoria Prime burned, not from weapons fire, though that too rained down from the sky. The planet burned with the light of 1,000 human ships, their engines blazing like artificial suns as they descended through the atmosphere. For 2 days, the battle had raged in orbit. The Valorian Defense Fleet, the largest armada their species had ever assembled, had fought with the desperation of the doomed. It had not been enough. Admiral Torvex stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching his world die. His flagship was crippled, its weapons destroyed, its engines failing. Around him, the wreckage of his fleet drifted in silent testimony to the failure of everything he had believed. 43 species. The Valorian Dominion had conquered 43 species over centuries of expansion. They had built an empire that stretched across an entire sector of space. They had believed themselves invincible. That belief had lasted exactly 2 years, 4 months, and 17 days. That was how long it had taken the humans to tear it all down. Admiral, his communications officer said weakly, "The humans are broadcasting a message. They want to speak with you." Torvex almost laughed. "Now they want to talk? After they have destroyed everything? They say they want to discuss terms of surrender." "Our surrender?" "No, Admiral. Theirs." Torvex blinked all 4 of his eyes in confusion. "They are not offering to surrender, Admiral. They are offering us the opportunity to surrender. Before things get worse." "As now." Torvex stared at the communication officer for a long moment. Then, despite everything, he felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this could end without the complete destruction of his species. Perhaps the humans were finally ready to negotiate. "Put them through," he ordered. The holographic display flickered to life. The face that appeared was the same one he had seen in countless intelligence briefings. Elena Vasquez, Supreme Commander of Human Forces. She was older now than she had been at the start of the war. Gray streaked her dark hair, and lines of exhaustion marked her face. But her eyes were the same. Cold, determined, utterly without mercy. "Admiral Torvex," she said, "I assume you know why I am calling. You wish to discuss terms. I wish to end this war, on our terms. You have one chance to accept them. If you refuse, we will continue until there is nothing left of your civilization." Torvex felt his hope dying. "And what are your terms?" "First, complete and unconditional surrender of all Valorian military forces. Your ships will be disarmed. Your soldiers will be detained. Your weapons factories will be dismantled. And second, every individual who participated in the attack on New Helsinki will be identified and tried for crimes against humanity. This includes you, Admiral. This includes every officer in your chain of command. This includes every soldier who fired a weapon that day." Torvex felt cold. "You want us to hand over our own people for execution?" "I did not say execution." Vasquez's voice was sharp. "We will conduct fair trials. Evidence will be presented. Defense will be allowed. Those found guilty will face punishment according to the severity of their crimes. Death is possible for those who gave the orders. Prison for those who followed them. But all of them will face justice. And if we refuse, then we will take them by force, and the process will be significantly less gentle." Torvex considered his options. He had very few. His fleet was destroyed. His planet was surrounded. The human ground forces were already landing in the major cities, meeting resistance that grew weaker by the hour. "Is that all?" he asked finally. "No, there is one more thing." Vasquez's expression changed. Something passed across her face that might have been pain. "The names of the 12,000 people who died on New Helsinki. You will learn them. Every Valorian will learn them. Your schools will teach them. Your monuments will bear them. For as long as your civilization exists, you will remember what was done and what it cost. You want us to memorize the names of the people we killed? I want you to remember them. I want your children to remember them. I want your children's children to remember them. 1,000 years from now. New Helsinki must never be forgotten. The moment your species forgets, the moment you begin to think that what happened was acceptable, that it could be done again without consequence, that is the moment we will return." She leaned forward. "Do you understand what I am telling you, Admiral? We are not destroying you because we do not want to become what you are. We do not slaughter civilians. We do not burn colonies. We fight soldiers who try to stop us, and when the fighting is over, we stop. That is what separates us from you. But you will never forget. And neither will we. Every human child will learn about New Helsinki. Every human will know what the Valorians did and what we did in response. This is our guarantee that it will never happen again." Memory. The most powerful weapon in the galaxy. Torvex stood in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. "We accept your terms," he said. "The Valorian Dominion surrenders." The surrender ceremony took place 3 days later in the Great Plaza of Valoria Prime's capital city. The city was scarred but intact. Human forces had been careful to minimize civilian casualties. They had targeted military installations, government buildings, defensive positions, not homes, not schools, not hospitals. The contrast with New Helsinki could not have been more stark. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the plaza, surrounded by human soldiers in their black and gray armor. Across from her, Admiral Torvex and the surviving members of the Valorian High Command knelt in the traditional posture of defeat. Their weapons lay at their feet. Their heads were bowed. Above them, a massive holographic display showed 12,000 faces. They scrolled past slowly, one after another. Each face was accompanied by a name, an age, and a brief description. Sophia, age 7, loved to draw. Anders, age 42, helped build the colony. Maria, age 39, made the best stew in the neighborhood. Eric, age 2, had just learned to walk. The faces continued to scroll as Vasquez spoke. "We gather here today to mark the end of a war that should never have begun. 2 years ago, the Valorian Dominion attacked a peaceful human colony. They killed 12,000 people, including 4,000 children. They expected us to surrender." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. They were wrong. She gestured to the faces above her. "These are the dead of New Helsinki. Farmers and teachers and doctors, mothers and fathers and children. They did not die in battle. They did not die fighting for conquest or glory. They died in their homes, in their schools, in their beds. They died because the Valorian Dominion decided that their lives did not matter." Quote. She turned to face Torvex directly. "Admiral Torvex, you commanded the fleet that destroyed New Helsinki. You gave the order to fire on civilian targets. You are responsible for the deaths of 12,000 innocent people." "I understand," Torvex said, his voice barely audible. "Do you? Do you truly understand what you have done? Can you look at those faces and comprehend the weight of their loss?" Torvex raised his head slightly. His 4 eyes found the holographic display, and for a long moment, he watched the faces scroll past. Sophia, with her gap-toothed smile. Anders with dirt on his hands from working in his garden. Maria laughing at something off camera. Eric reaching for his mother's arms. Something changed in the Admiral's expression. For the first time, he was not seeing statistics or acceptable losses. He was seeing people. Real people, with real lives and real families. People who would never grow old, never have children, never see another sunset. His voice cracked. I did not know them. I did not think of them as people. They were just numbers. Obstacles to be removed. And now, Torvex looked at the faces again. Tears began to stream from all four of his eyes. Now I see them. Now I understand. He lowered his head. I am sorry. I know it means nothing. I know it cannot bring them back. But I am truly, deeply sorry for what I have done. Vasquez watched him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Your apology is noted. But apologies are not enough. Words do not rebuild what was destroyed. Words do not bring back the dead. Actions are required. Memory is required. Remembrance is required. She turned to address the crowd of Valorians who had gathered to witness the ceremony. By the terms of surrender, every Valorian will learn the names of the dead of New Helsinki. Your schools will teach them. Your monuments will bear them. Your ceremonies will honor them. For the rest of your history, you will carry this weight, not as punishment, but as responsibility. This is the price of what was done. This is the guarantee that it will never happen again. She turned back to Torvex. Admiral Torvex, you will stand trial for your crimes. So will every officer who served under you. If found guilty, you will face whatever sentence the court decides. That is justice. But the killing ends here. Today, no more Valorians will die for what happened on New Helsinki. Your civilians are safe. Your culture will survive. Your species will continue. We did not come here to destroy you. We came here to make sure you never forget. She stepped closer to Torvex, lowering her voice so that only he could hear. I wanted to kill you. Every day for 2 years, I dreamed of it. I imagined my hands around your throat, watching the light fade from your eyes. It would have been so easy, so satisfying. Torvex looked up at her, waiting. But then I thought of Sophia, the little girl whose drawing I have carried since the beginning of this war. She was 7 years old. She drew pictures of her family. She had no hatred in her heart. She just wanted to be happy and safe and loved. Vasquez's voice softened. I asked myself, what would she want? Would she want more death? More destruction? More children growing up without parents? More families torn apart by war? She shook her head. No. She would want peace. She would want the fighting to stop. She would want us to be better than those who hurt her. She stepped back. So that is what we will do. We will be better. We will show mercy where you showed none. We will spare lives where you took them, not because you deserve it, but because we refuse to become what you are. She turned away. The war is over. Remember why it was fought. Remember what it cost. The message was broadcast across the galaxy 1 week later. Every species, every world, every ship received it simultaneously. It was not a threat. It was not a demand. It was simply a statement, delivered in a calm voice by the human supreme commander. We are humanity. 2 years ago, a hostile species attacked one of our colonies. They killed 12,000 of our people, including thousands of children. They expected us to surrender. We did not. Instead, we fought. We fought for 2 years across a dozen star systems. We lost nearly 500,000 of our own. But in the end, we won. Not through cruelty or genocide, but through determination, unity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The war is now over. The Valorian Dominion has surrendered. Their commanders will face justice. Their people will remember what was done. And we will ensure that it never happens again. To every species in this galaxy, we offer this message. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek empire. We want only to live in peace, to explore the stars, to build a future for our children. If you leave us alone, we will leave you alone. If you trade with us, we will trade with you. If you offer friendship, we will accept it. But if you attack us, if you threaten our families, if you harm our children, then know this: there is no force in this galaxy that will protect you from what follows. We are humanity. We remember, and we do not forgive. The message ended. Across the galaxy, species that had watched the war from a safe distance considered what they had witnessed. They had seen a weak, primitive species transform into something unstoppable. They had seen the Valorian Dominion, conqueror of 43 species, brought to its knees in just over 2 years, and they learned the lesson that the Valorians had learned too late. Never attack humanity. Never threaten their children. Never give them a reason to hunt, because if you did, they would come for you. They would find you, and they would never, ever stop. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Elena Vasquez stood at the observation window and looked out at the stars. The war was over. The dead were avenged. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But the cost had been so high. She held Sophia's drawing in her hands, the paper worn nearly transparent from 2 years of constant handling. The 4 stick figures still held hands under the yellow sun, a family frozen in a moment of happiness that had been shattered by weapons, fire, and greed. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I brought them justice. I hope it was enough." The stars offered no answer. They simply burned in the darkness, cold and distant and eternal. Elena Vasquez folded the drawing carefully and placed it in her pocket. Then she turned away from the window and walked off the bridge, leaving the war behind her. But she would never forget New Helsinki. None of them would. Not the humans, who would carry the memory of their dead across the centuries. Not the Valorians, who would teach the names to every generation that followed. Not the galaxy, which would remember forever that humanity was not prey. They were the predators. They always had been, and the universe had finally learned the truth.